Welcome to the Transport Inquiry Podcast. My name is Stephen Corcoran. Joining me today is Mr. Keith Littler.
Steve, how are you, mate?
I'm excellent, thank you, Keith. For those who don't know Keith, Keith's a journalist. He's a truckie, 50 years. He was the editor of Big Rigs. He's written in Truckin Life for a long time. He was the co-founder of Grunt Files, and he was also a co-founder of the Australian Motoring Enthusiast Party.
I've been a busy kid.
Did I forget anything this time, Keith?
Oh, mate, I forget it.
Oh, I forgot to mention that Keith is also an author of a submission to the Rural and Regional Affairs and Transport References Committee, inquiring into road transport, which is why I invited you.
Yeah, we'll say you should. You bullied me into writing it.
You know certain things, Keith, that we in the community need to hear. And it's no big secret about how screwed the industry is in a lot of ways.
Why we need a Senate inquiry is absolutely beyond me. Why we need any sort of an inquiry. I mean, let's just go and fix it. We've been calling for that for a lot of years. Some 30 years ago, I was running heavy haulage. I had the opportunity to write a regular column for Truckin Life. Mark Gibson was the editor back then. They Gibbo, if you're still out there. Basically, you know, I wrote the Speaking Out column, and it was my view of what was happening on the highway at the time. It turned into a couple of years of column with all the issues, the kind of issues that we've been trying to get resolved forever, and that now we have a Senate inquiry to look into it, to find out what the problems are. Well, you know what? I told you 30 years ago what the problems were, and long before I told anybody, other guys were telling them as well.
That's right. I've seen the political side of it and how this inquiry and all these other inquiries take all this time while these guys are getting killed.
Inquiries will always take a lot of time, and at the end of the day, is ever anything done? No. Everybody, you know, it's like taking a leak in a wetsuit. You know, you feel warm and fuzzy for a while, but nobody else knows anything about it.
There's been lots of reports done of the transport industry over the years. They did a big one on fatigue in the year 2000 called Burning of the Midnight Oil, and it had recommendations and stuff like letting the government know that there was 2,400 parking bays missing that were required. And from what I read from Rod Hannafy with his submission is that those numbers have actually increased, that we need these parking bays and there's thousands missing.
While we're on the subject of parking bays, let's start. We might as well rip straight into it, right?
Yeah.
Parking bays.
Yep.
We all know there's not enough of them.
Yep.
A lot of them, if it's raining, don't even think about trying to get into them.
Yep.
And then you have the other problem of tourist season, particularly North Queensland, Northern WA, the Territory, where all the grey nomads decide to head north for the winter.
Yep.
And man, you can't even get into a parking bay up there. And I mean, like they talk about fatigue and fatigue management.
Yep.
We need dedicated truck-only parking bays within reasonable distance of each other. You know, there is nothing worse. There's only one parking bay in the next 150 k's. You get there, and it's chockers. You can't get in. What are you supposed to do?
Yeah, I'm just looking at Rod Hannafy's submission. It's number 45 on the website, and his attachment 1 regards the National Rest Area Strategy 2019, and what he says on one of the newest bits of road is the new Toowoomba Second Range crossing that's just been completed, is that it's a 41 kilometre stretch and there's not one rest area on it, and he wrote that's a criminal oversight, and I would agree with him on that. Well, I mean, when the National Heavy Vehicle Parking Bay Strategy shows that we're thousands of parking bays short, this inquiry it's only just going to keep echoing that. When do you think that they'll catch up?
Asking me how long it's going to take to fix? I don't know. Will it fix any problems? I don't know. But I can't see any of it happening really soon.
Yeah. I don't think they're ever going to fix it, Keith, even with a national strategy through this report. But I think we can shame them a lot in how little they've done. After 50 years, what's your general view on the industry?
Well, mate, when I first started out in it 50 years ago, I reckoned it was the greatest thing. You know, it was so huge to be a part of. Like, I guess We all have that magic feeling when we first start. It kind of went downhill after that, you know, and I sort of thought, hey, if they ever get the shit together, this is just going to be so brilliant, you know. But you just watch it going downhill. 20 years after that,
Hmm.
I started writing my columns.
Yep.
That was 30 years ago, right? We're still talking about the exact same stuff that's been going downhill for the 50 years that I've been involved in the industry.
So when I mention things like enforcement, what comes to mind compared to back then?
Oh, look, compared to back then, look, back then, there were a lot of coppers that had quite reputations, you know. They were known for chasing down trucks, you know. Taipan Tom from Gundagai,
Mm.
Yappy Lawrence from Brisbane, Paw Paw. Everybody remembers
Yeah,
Paw
that's
Paw,
right.
or the
Yep.
older guys anyway. You know, the big difference between then and now, you know, like it was a bit of a game, you know, back then, and it wasn't serious.
Mm.
Now, you know, as we know, we've got massive fines on logbooks, massive fines for everything basically, and you have a bit of a stuff up involving a civilian, you're going to do time. You know,
Yep.
it's too serious. So enforcement. The one point I do want to make about enforcement, and this really gets up my goat. We are the only industry in Australia that has police forces and task forces specifically set up, established to target us as an industry 24/7.
Yep.
Like, if that is not verging on harassment,
Yep.
almost criminal,
Yep.
you know, I don't know what is.
It,
That's my view on enforcement.
I think it stifles economic growth as well because you're slowing these trucks, stopping these trucks, and you're taking away these ability to keep moving freight while you're doing all this enforcement. But so we'll go on though. So I said what came to mind with enforcement. So what comes to mind with wages? Because look, it's a lot different how you get paid now compared to back then.
I guess trip money's always been the big thing. We've always been paid trip money. I guess the good thing back then with being paid was when you worked for a reputable company, if you happened to be working local on wages, you'd go away and do a trip somewhere, and they'd put you on trip money, and it was chances to make really big dollars in those days. So that was great. These days, I get a bit upset with the whole concept of K rates. You know, really, you get paid X amount of dollars to travel 1,000 kilometres.
Mm.
You know, you could be running north. You know, you could be running Bowen. Oh, Bowen's running hot this year. You know, let's get into the capsicums or whatever. You know, mangoes. So you rip up the Bowen. They've had a rainstorm. No, but nothing's getting picked for a few days. So you sit on your butt in Bowen for a couple of days. Who pays you? Nobody. Nobody. Bring your own money. You know, cost you a couple of days to live up there. No wages. No expense money. You know, and that's the way it's always been. I think that's wrong. I think that we should be paid, you know, our 72 hours a week, basically. If that's what we're getting paid to work, we should be paid for it.
These drivers that aren't being paid correctly, they're propping up the national economy by working for free, aren't they?
They're not only propping up the economy, they're particularly propping up the guy they're working for. You know, there's a few operators out there that, you know, they quite adamantly or quite openly admit that, you know, there's no money in it for them. If as an owner driver you can't make a wage out of your truck, how the hell can you afford to put a driver in it, pay him a wage, and still make your payments?
What about
Not gonna happen.
subcontractor rates?
Subcontractor rates, look, the most criminal thing that ever happened was backloading rates. I don't know what, you know, 50 years on, I still can't work out what a backload is.
Well, it
You
goes on the
know,
back.
well, you know, like I live in Queensland, and for 50 years apparently I've been loading out of my hometown with a back load, and I've been coming home with a front load. So I can't quite work that out. But the big thing is it costs me and everybody else the same amount of money to move a vehicle from A to B as what it does from B to A. So why should I get paid less to go in one direction than the other? And quite often, so that the actual freight forwarder makes a bigger profit.
I don't know how they figure out these backloading rates. Was there some kind of program or
Yeah,
something back
yeah,
in the day to
yeah.
figure it out?
How dumb are you? Mate, back in the day when they first came up with the formula for calculating back rates,
Yeah.
they actually didn't have computers. They used to use pens and paper. You know, remember those things?
Yeah.
So the way it's calculated is there's not a lot of freight out of this town, so this is how much we're going to pay you.
Oh.
Okay, so now
Yeah.
that's the formula for working out the basic backloading
So,
rate.
yeah.
The variables come into effect when there's more trucks and less freight.
Mm.
Mate, we're going to pay you $10 a ton.
So
You what? Well, take it or leave it. There's plenty of trucks here and they all want to get home.
so the price fixing is by the individual major carriers to prop up their own bottom line, basically. Is whatever they can make out of it, they will.
Well, I think when you've got a situation, and look, I can't speak about the exact figures because I don't have them. Figures that get banded around, quite often you'll find, prime contractors are earning, sorry, charging or paying the subcontractor, 25-30% of what they're charging the client.
Yep. Well, that's how they have to cover their business costs because they have so many more staff and warehouses and all those kinds of overheads that these owner drivers don't have.
I get that, but there's one thing that's always kind of made me wonder. If it was so profitable to own a truck, why do major companies hire subcontractors? Why don't they go and buy, if they use another 100 subbies a night, why don't they go and buy another 100 trucks?
Mm.
At the end of the day, would they not be more profitable? The answer to that is no,
Yeah.
because they can run a subby cheaper than they can run their own trucks.
That's right.
Mm.
It's unsustainable, and that's what the inquiry's hearing from these witnesses and from these submissions, that it's just unsustainable. When there's owner drivers going to the Senate saying they have to compete in this market, and they go on to say that it's unfair and it should be regulated in some kind of way, but they don't want an RSRT back. So what comes to mind when you think of that? What can they do?
The only way to make change is for everybody to unite. You have to stick together
Mm.
because nothing else will change. And whilst ever this industry is in a situation where everybody's saying, "Oh man, if I take a day off work, I'm going to lose my truck," guess what, man? You've already lost it.
Yeah.
You're on borrowed time.
If that's your margin.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the common theme that between what Jerry was saying and what you're saying is that these margins these guys are operating under, there's no margin.
There is no margin.
Yeah.
You work the figures out. I don't have the figures in front of me, so I wouldn't even, pretend to know what they are.
Mm.
But by the time you take out your fuel and you take out your, your insurance, your tyres, wear and tear, servicing, regular maintenance, whatever, you're left with absolutely nothing. I actually saw a thing the other day of some guy. Oh, it might have been on Jerry's Sweatshop with Wheels, where after expenses, costs and expenses for his trip, he had like $70 in his pocket,
Yeah.
and hadn't taken a wage.
Yeah.
Guys, you're not going to survive.
No.
Get your shit together. Unite.
Yeah.
United you stand. Divided, man, you got nothing.
Yeah. Well,
Sorry.
I went through all those cost inputs to the rate calculator with Tim Squires and through the RSRT. So I do know, well, I did know what the costs were at that time. Of course, they're all changed now because the fuel's jumped because of the thing with America and Iran and the bushfires and all this kind of stuff. Jacked all the prices up on everything. So you wouldn't know. And with the slowdown, the economy being slow and all that kind of stuff, who knows what the rate would be now. But all of those inputs were in there, and I mean, it was a very technical thing over those 4 years to do 3 different attempts to get the rate right and make sure you had the right inputs into it, and there was no profit margin in that cost recovery model.
I got to ask you, who the hell decides that we need a rate that will cover our expenses on running a vehicle and then make, $50 a day to live on, to support your family on. This is bullshit, man. The people that are arguing these rates against us, i.e. the barristers that are representing Messrs. Toll, Lynn Fox, RTO, whatever, those guys, because they spent a couple of years at uni and bought a couple of $100,000 worth of leather-bound books that, occasionally get read, they think they can afford to charge somebody $1,000 an hour. They're better than us. They wear the pinstripe suit to prove it. What gives them the right to argue that we, as truck drivers, who quite often have a far, far bigger investment in our business than what the barrister does, what gives them the right to come in and argue that we don't deserve to earn a wage after our expenses? This is bullshit. Somebody needs to stand up and say, you know what, if you're not getting X amount of dollars per K, per truck, you know.
It showed in 2016 when they stirred everyone up to tell them they were all going to lose their jobs, and so they all fought against it on behalf of the ALC, which is, well, you mentioned just then RTO and Toll and Linfox and all these others, but it is the Australian Logistics Council that they're all a member of that comes up with these decisions to fight against it on behalf of their corporate membership. And you look who the corporate members are, and you realise that they don't have anyone's best interest in except their shareholders. And any kind of shift in the power to give these drivers legislated power and the ability to use the chain of responsibility for themselves to smash these companies, give them a whip with the chain, was they removed that, so it's just from the jail to the truck driver's neck, and that's all. They removed themselves from that equation just by, well, they fought with it all the way up till the orders came in, then they fought it in the High Court, and then that lost, so then they took it to the government and, stirred them all up, so they all thought they were going to lose their job. That Glenn Lazarus and all that, like, he was just after votes, and he's probably got a lot of personal responsibility for, he probably read nothing about it and just voted against it because he thought it was going to get him the votes to get back in, and thank God he didn't. But
look, I wouldn't come to the defence of any politician, including Glenn Lazarus. But what I would have to say is that I guess, like all of us, it's pretty hard to make an informed decision when you've got so much bullshit coming at you from all directions. Like there were those of us who believed that the RST was basically the saviour of the industry, which it almost was there for a little while. And then there are those who are saying, no, you've got to keep the industry oppressed. You've got the likes of Senator Jackie Lambie, who went out into the streets to some roadhouse that was full of, well, basically they look like unemployed truck drivers, but, I don't mean to be rude there, but but they're sitting there going, well, if this award rate comes through, we're not going to get loaded, and that means we're all going to get our trucks repossessed. I never understood who was going to move the freight when all these drivers were no longer being loaded because they wanted an extra 50 cents.
Well, I don't know, Keith. I don't know. The corporate members of the Australian Logistics Council are Star Track, Woolworths, Coles, Horizon, Cube, Brookfield Rail, Asiano, Toll, BIS, Linfox, ARTC, Macaleese, DGL and Qantas.
So the Japanese Post Office is a member of one of our organisations.
That's right, they're a corporate member. And then a national sponsor would be Loscam, IBM, what else have we got? Coates Hire, CHEP, Australia Post are against safe rates. BHP, TNT, the Queensland Government, the New South Wales Government, Coca-Cola, Metcash, New South Wales Transport, Telstra, and Origin, Schenker, New South Wales Ports, a few others. They are all, in their statement, said, the ALC has made a submission to the government's review of the Road Safety Remuneration Tribunal, which proposed the abolition of the tribunal and the repeal of the Road Safety Remuneration Act 2012. The majority ALC position is held because, number one, there are specific provisions contained in Chapter 5 and 6 of the Heavy Vehicle National Law relating to the management of speeding and fatigue. The major elements of that affect the safety of workers in the industry that require all members of the freight chain to take all reasonable steps to prevent speed and fatigue offences. The further prescription of duties contained in the RSRO could therefore be characterised as unnecessary duplication, right? So they want to get rid of it because they don't want to duplicate the National Heavy Vehicle Law, which doesn't work anyway because it's not national. Then number two is they say the Australian workforce health and safety laws already impose on a person conducting a business or undertaking a primary responsibility to follow the as low as reasonably practicable ALARP concept of encouraging appropriate safety outcomes. So keep it safe out there is good enough. And this means that, again, the current RSRO appears to be unnecessary duplication. So if you just say keep it safe, right, then that is good enough. And number three, there are in existence industry safety codes such as the National Logistics Safety Code of Practice, which has been registered in Victoria under the Road Safety Act 1986. Who enforces the National Logistics Safety Code in Victoria? Well, how do they...
I'm lost. My eyeballs are doing burnouts in my head.
How is the position of these barristers that a state law from 1986 that's never been used is comparable to 2 years, 4 years of inquiries into road safety? How the hell do these lawyers get paid huge dollars to write this stuff? I could have written that on my iPhone.
Smart iPhone.
But okay, so we've got all these ports and wharves, guys, Loscom, CHEP, all these huge, big billionaire companies, right? And they're all under one group. How do you fight against that?
How does a group like Loscom, CHEP, Tolls
The
actually
rail
fall into that category anyway? Like, they shouldn't be in there with Coles, Woolworths. Like, isn't there a bit of a conflict of interest in
the
there?
supply chain.
Just as, isn't there a bit of a conflict when, major shareholders in major transport companies hold major shareholdings or board positions on major retailers? And I don't know.
Well, I mean, these government ministers or advisors or whatever, they go in and out into the corporate sector, into the private sector, into the government sector again, and around it goes. And I think they're on the gravy train.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. The comparable data that goes to show the analysis of truck driver fatalities that I've got are pretty damning, Keith. And I don't know how these barristers can actually legal speak their way to politically be able to bury these drivers in this inquiry as being, oh look, there's nothing to see here. Look, we've raised industry standards and we've done this and we've done that, but the statistics, look, they're not going to be able to bullshit their way out of this conversation, are they, Keith?
What do you think they get paid the big bucks?
I've gone to great lengths to talk to a lot of people about this inquiry, and they all have different points of view about what can or can't be done. And, well, I mean, parking bays is the big one for me. Sleeper berths is a big one for me. Increasing the truck standards, increasing their remuneration, making sure they're getting paid for risking their life. Like, they're out there dying for the award. That's all. I think there's ways to to alleviate these mitigating circumstances that are causing a lot of these crashes, and people have addressed them in their own submissions and also their evidence, and driver training and all of these different awareness campaigns, and increasing the or decreasing the national age of the fleet, and providing more rest areas and providing all these different infrastructure things that we need. But at the same time, these guys get killed, and it's like it doesn't even matter. Whereas if the truck drivers all went to Afghanistan and we were getting killed 3 a week, it would be news that 3 guys are getting killed a week over there serving them. But because we're serving Australia, it just seems to be accepted that, what can I do about it? It's too big of a problem.
I don't care as long as my cornflakes are there in the morning.
But that's the thing, and I've had conversations with people since I recorded the last episode where they've told me directly that you cannot stop these drivers getting killed, and that's such an attitude that I find amongst all these people that, shit happens and truck drivers die. What are you going to do?
Yeah, look, I hear what you're saying. I just don't see how it's going to happen. I mean, you can give a driver all the training in the world. You can pay him big money so he can have a few days off here and there. You can give him the best gear to drive. But at the end of the day, he rocks out of the depot 6 o'clock in the night. He's going to be in 6 o'clock in the morning. He's driving on the same shitty roads with the same shitty traffic.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's only getting worse.
Yep.
But that's no excuse to just go, oh, okay.
No, it's not an excuse. I'm just saying I don't understand how an inquiry is going to implement anything that'll, I mean, sure, all those things that you mentioned will help. They'll make a huge difference.
Well, in that,
but we don't need a bloody inquiry to do that. Well, wake up, Australia, or at least the Australian transport industry.
You've got so much experience in bringing these issues to light from the past to now. What would be the top 3 things that they could implement that would start addressing some of these issues, like apart from implementing a minimum freight rate?
Well, I was going to say my first 3 choices would be money, money, and money.
Yeah, okay.
Because I think that ultimately, as Noel's saying, money is the root of all evil, and in this case, it really is true. Without the cash, it's a transport is a very fluid society. Pretty much everything that comes in from your truck goes back out again. You've got to pay for tyres, you've got to pay for diesel, you've got to pay for wages, you've got to pay for
replacement at the end
replacement at the end of the period of time. Exactly. Damaged gear along the way. Unthinking drivers, whatever.
Yeah.
So I think that until we can talk all we like about fatigue. What's causing fatigue? Are guys going too hard? They probably are in a lot of cases still. That's a problem. But how do we address that? Well, man, until you've got enough money to address it, you can't.
So
no matter what you do, the insolvencies in the industry and so forth. How do you stop them? You stop them with money. Money is the root of all evil. You've got to have money to operate a truck.
How many days margin should an owner driver have up his sleeve to take down for, say, these bushfires or a flood, or he has a large mechanical breakdown away from home, or he becomes sick? Should he have at least a week or 2 weeks margin to have his truck off the road?
I think that if a guy had a week to cover himself, he would be an extremely lucky man in this industry.
Yeah.
He'd be somebody that's doing well. Most guys that I've met over the years in this industry couldn't survive for a few days without the dollars rolling in, without the wheels turning. I think in all realism, if you didn't have a couple of months up your sleeve, any business, you can't go in and say, oh, I'm going to make money and I'll have my first check next week. You got to know that the first 6 months, 12 months, whatever, you're going to be scratching to make ends meet. You have a stuffer, particularly if you buy a second-hand bit of gear.
Mm.
You don't know what you're getting. You got bugger all warranty, if it gets on it at all, depending, if you bought it from Honest Joe or not. So like mechanical breakdowns are always a reality. And even if you have that new truck, brand spanking new, but you drive her out of the showroom, get 50 k's up the road, and something happens.
Yep.
It's happened before.
Yep.
It'll happen again. Takes them a week to find out what the problem is.
Yep.
It can happen.
These drivers and owner drivers, they're the meat and the sandwich in so many different ways. And the pressure from the top, from all these fines and all the legislation and regulations and stuff like that. And then you got from the bottom up, you got these deaths, you got these injuries, you got a negative public perception. You've got these task forces that are actively out chasing truck drivers down for their money. So what can drivers do apart from get together and bring evidence to this inquiry? I think this is our last stand, don't you think?
Look, I think that the big thing everybody can do, as you said, really, they need to be providing evidence to the inquiry, although I believe we're probably getting pretty close to the end of that. So, if it's still open, you'd better hurry.
Yeah.
What can you do? Look, we're an industry that's really good at talking about stuff and then keep going. You pass another truck in the night. What do you reckon about so-and-so, bloke? Yeah, pretty fucked up, eh? Yeah, we should do something. Oh, yeah, sorry, you're out of range, mate.
Yeah.
And that's as far as it gets, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
She's all bloody anonymous talk over radio.
It's really fragmented.
It is. Yeah. It is. And how do you how do you unfragment or defrag? Yeah, how's that for a yuppie word? How do you defrag an industry like road transport?
I guess the only way you could do it would encapsulate the whole drivers by inducting them into one system on the road network, so that everyone was site-specific inducted to the road network, as you do to public companies, so that you were specific inducted to be on the road, accredited to be on the road, and the company was accredited to be on the road, and the vehicle was accredited to be on the road.
That sounds like a lot of paperwork, a lot of red tape. And you know what? We've got to really cut to the chase and get back to it, right? This industry is suffocating under the red tape, right? Logbooks. You know what? For 50 years I've been filling out a logbook. I didn't realise till I was talking to you the other day. You mentioned the fact that there's 34 pages at the front of the book on how to fill it out. I didn't realise that because I never read the bloody thing, but how is it even possible that it could take 34 pages to tell you how to fill out a 24-hour diary?
And you still get it wrong.
And you still get it wrong. Not only that, you can be heavily penalised for getting it wrong. It's the only job in the world where you get your paperwork wrong and you cop a massive fine over it. And it's also a statutory declaration that you're signing without any representation or any authentication or anybody checking it, whatever. I think that now what really annoys me with logbooks, all right, you've got to fill it out every day, except of course for the 2 days that you have off and whatever. We all know the rules, I think. Well, I don't. Jerry doesn't. Sorry, Jerry. But when you fill out the book, okay, every page, what do you got to fill out?
Everything.
What's my name?
Yeah.
What's my license number? Yeah. Who do I work for? What day is it? They've got all this information at the start of your bloody book. Every single page in every logbook is
numbered,
serial marked, serial numbered. Every single book in Australia is in the database. They know who the hell owns it. If they're too bloody lazy to turn to the front of the book to write your name out when they're writing your ticket, and to be quite honest with you, it's probably more legible at the front of the book than it is by the time I get halfway through. I mean, why does it have to be so ridiculously difficult and unnecessarily difficult? Because it's been designed by dickheads that have never worked a day in their life. They sit on their ass and go, how can we fuck up a truck driver today?
I think also the way that it's written and the way that they present it is to be used in evidence in court. It's got nothing to do with fatigue. It's got nothing to do with counting. It's got nothing to do with compliance. It's got everything to do with here is the evidence that we are going to use against you in court.
Evidence that you've signed has been true and correct without any representation.
That's right. And Jerry's said that 1 minute or 15 minutes, unless you are prepared to attest that you signed on and off and finished or started work on the quarter hour, you are making a false entry.
Absolutely.
Yeah, which is a $15,000 fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're stuck. The drivers are stuck in this quagmire of law.
Yeah, yeah. Well, there are more pages of law, and I can't quote the figure now, but relating to transport, road transport itself, it's absolutely enormous, the number of laws that are there. It's so many thousand, isn't it?
Well, it's
6,000.
4,600 pages, Jerry was saying.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
on the National Heavy Vehicle Law, without including the state laws and the council laws and all the other.
Council laws, I don't know whether it still happens, but I remember back in the day, you'd go down the bloody road, especially that inland road, you'd be looking for scalies or Gundy or Dubbo or whatever.
Yeah.
You get to Moree, not only have you got the scalies there, but you've got the local council with their scales as well.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, God, give me a break.
Well, they have a shire to maintain, and there's a lot of money to be made from these truck drivers and these massive fines that are going to keep going up.
I'll give you a better one than that, mate. BHP, the big Australian.
Yep.
I don't know how they got so big, but I know how they stay that big. So, over in the territory where they've got their biggest assets, up around the Pilbara and whatever in the west, they actually run their own enforcement policies. Like $3,000 for not wearing a seatbelt, or they have their own speed cameras out on the road and all this sort of shit. And it's like, what is it coming to when even companies themselves are trying to ping the very people that they're employing to do a job for them? Are we taking this whole workplace health and safety thing too far? Now, I know that there's kind of a contradiction, because on the one hand we talk about, deaths in the workplace, and I agree with that, but I mean, to actually come to the point where you're going to try and ping some guy for driving on a private road at 2 kilometres an hour over what their posted sign was. And like we had all the computers in the trucks up there that used to talk to the roadside monitors, and the alarm would go off. You go around a 15-kilometre bend and it'd send a message back to the office that you went round at 15.4 kilometres an hour.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, leave me out of it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but that's the way it's going. These automated trucks, these self-driving trucks, these hydrogen fuel-powered trucks, electric trucks, it's all going to go that way.
Have you ever seen an autonomous truck?
Oh, I haven't seen one in Australia, but they're
Well,
going to try
I
and get
have,
them.
mate. I've never seen one on the highway, but I have actually been on haul roads.
Yep.
Where the autonomous trucks there, the driverless trucks on the haul roads, are about 10 times bigger than what you are, and that's with a wide load on.
Yeah.
There is nothing scarier than sitting there watching a driverless truck coming at you.
Yeah, not knowing if it's going to stop.
And not knowing what's going to happen. And the controllers on the UHF saying, turn right there, and you're going, man, there's a big dumpy coming at me. Don't worry, it'll stop. When there's nobody in there to put the foot on the pedal, I'm worried.
Part of the terms of reference that is they're going into the new technologies, and so I'm guessing that they're going to have that a kind of the newest and latest and greatest kind of gadgets come up, and I don't see them making it any more safer in a crash wearing a headset that's watching your eyes.
Yeah. Look like a bit of a space cadet and end up going through the clouds anyway. Yeah, no, look, the technology, I think it suits the watchers rather than the users. I think technology really, having an eyesight monitor on a headset to see if you blink too many times.
Mm.
Yeah, sure, that's great technological advancement. But man, I got to ask you, is it really going to save anybody?
Well, I don't see how it will, but maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. I'm not too sure. But the thing is that even before they implement any kind of regime of safety, they need to address the issues that are happening right now and that have been going on for 30 years. The technology is not going to remove any of these mitigating factors from it. What's happening with this Senate inquiry currently, Keith, is today is the 16th of January 2020, and I've been told that the Senate is going to hold a hearing in Brisbane at the end of February or the start of March.
Oh, good.
So you're local in Brisbane, you're going to come along and listen and at least see what happens?
uh, I might sit in the peanut gallery.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think that will be open to anyone, so any drivers that want to listen in, it will be also live streamed from the parliamentary website for anyone that wants to listen in the truck that can't get there. And also we're going to record it and put it out for everyone if they do miss it.
Well, nobody's going to have any excuses, are they?
Well, I mean, they can't run and hide from this, Keith. We're
No.
bringing too much evidence. There's too many guys coming forward with stuff that they can't ignore it.
There have been problems in this industry since day dot, since the beginning, basically. Things never ever got any better. They kind of continued to go downhill. It's in a spiral. The whole industry's in a spiral and has been for a long time.
Yeah. I mean, the statistics and the facts and the data all confirm what you're saying. Like, I'm looking at the terms of reference and I'm looking at all these submissions. There's 98 submissions on the website now. Yours isn't published yet. You did send one in, though.
Yeah, you badgered me into it.
Okay, for everyone who hasn't sent one that wants to, the email address is rat.sen@aph.gov.au. You can look it up on the Senate website. The link will be in the description for people to go and have a click and have a look at all those submissions. I want to say thank you for giving us your valuable time and your wisdom for 50 years.
Not too much wisdom there, Steve, but you're welcome with the time.
But I do appreciate it, and everyone that's listening should go and have a look at Keith's submission when it is published on the website. I want to thank Tony Fulton, Jerry Brown, Sir, for being on the podcast so far, and Keith. I've got a list of guys coming up in future episodes. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel, share it amongst all your friends, share the information. We'll let you know when the next hearing's on in late February, early March. Thank you.
See you.